This is the Roller Coaster Podcast, and I'm your host, Lucie Q. Life is a wild ride. It has twists and turns. It's scary, exciting, and downright fun. So throw your head back, arms in the air, and come along with me for the ride.
Life is like a roller coaster, baby, baby. I wanna ride.
Do you wistfully dream, asking yourself if you're living your full potential? Are you ready to step into your true calling? Maybe you feel an overwhelming need to wake up, align yourself, and create that better version of you. Joining me today is Christine Bizier, who helps women build a life they love with a Bliss blueprint. Hi, Christine.
Hi.
How are you?
Thanks for having me here.
Oh, it's my pleasure. So you have a long list of certifications, so I thought it might be easier if you just summarize what you do and how you help people.
Okay, sounds good. I decided a few years ago, maybe 2 years ago, to kind of come up with a concept of Bliss Architect as a title, because people always ask, what do you do? And like you said, I have the full list of, all the tools in my toolbox. And I was finding that it was a lot. So just in a short introduction, I am a Bliss Architect, Life Coach, Energy Healer, and Yoga Teacher. So that gives you a little bit of idea, of that holistic background that I'm coming from and working with energy healing. And I have a variety of different modalities, and those are the tools in my toolbox to create the Bliss Blueprint. So, yoga, access consciousness, which is a transformational coaching and energy process. I started with Reiki. I work with essential oils and a whole bunch of different things like that kind of have brought me to this space this time.
So you're looking at working with someone as a whole, everything that makes them up, like you were saying, the yoga, the energy healing. It's not just what goes on in our minds, but it's also what goes on in our bodies as a whole.
Yeah, well, what I was finding and seeing with clients and even myself was that our bodies give us information. So it's not just the mindset that we have, it's also where we can hold tension and stress in our body. And something that comes up all the time for myself as, information that I find interesting, and it's kind of like that's part of the blueprint, is when we're incongruent. So if you say like life is great and I'm stress-free and I'm a business owner, entrepreneur, and I have no worries and but there's information in your body and maybe you're holding tension in your shoulders or your jaw, or you're getting a lot of headaches, there can be, and I always say disclaimer, go see your doctor, work with your healthcare practitioners. And then if that's not working, I always look for, well, what else? So then I know that's information that there might be, like issues in the tissues of stress that you're maybe not aware of that you're holding in your body. So then I can work with a variety of different tools to get to that place, whether it's your business, relationships, like your own personal, even self-growth, transformation, spiritual journey.
So say I'll use myself as an example. I have a reoccurring problem with some of the discs in my back, L4 and L5. And they haven't been bothering me for a while, but over the last couple of weeks, they've been really nagging. Is that the type of thing that you may identify as, a stressor in the body, that, yes, I have this physical problem, but it's caused because of what's going on in my life, in my head? Is that the type of thing you work with?
Absolutely. And usually what I'll say to someone is, exhaust all the other avenues, work with, a chiropractor or doctor or, different things like that. And then when people come to me, it's usually they're like, I've tried everything and nothing is working. And I go, okay, that's great. What else is possible? Let's look at it. And typically we have a roadmap, and people don't talk about this roadmap in our body, but we have a roadmap, or like an owner's manual that we don't learn in school. We don't learn this when we're young. And when I was studying yoga, it's so interesting to look at, the ancient, information that was passed down with energy centers. So we have these energy vortexes that tend to situate themselves in certain spots in our body, also known, if you're familiar with chakras at all.
Yeah.
You have your chakra or your energy center. So then you look at, okay, so that would be your lower chakra area, which can tend to be, about, often lower back people will find issues with around money or support or security. So we could look at that, and it might just be an old belief that's in there that you didn't even realize you still had, or maybe stepping into your future and doing some, I know for me, doing something like this before, it was terrifying. And so I used to have sciatic problems. I used to have a lot of lower back pain. And it also, in my opinion, links into other energy centers. So I used to be very shy, and even something like this, I never would have said yes before. I even have my own podcast that I've started this year, just kind of pushing myself on my comfort zone. But then the throat chakra is activated, your energy center for your throat. So that's very much can be connected to other energy centers, and so individual. That's why the idea of like a Bliss blueprint is like unique to you, because there's no other one like you. Like every snowflake is individual, and so are we. So when we go see someone, and it's a cookie cutter approach, well, they don't know your history. They don't know everything that's kind of what makes, you, including our limiting points of view or beliefs that we may not even know that are still existing.
So can you just take me back for a minute? I'm familiar with the chakras and how they sort of affect the body and how they can benefit us. But can you maybe just elaborate on that a little bit, just in case there's somebody listening that isn't familiar with what a chakra is?
Absolutely. So, we have these energy centers. Typically, most people talk about the 7 most common. So you have your root chakra, and each chakra correlates to different elements. So that relates to security, safety, money, so abundance. And it's if you were in a seated position, like in the yoga position, a seated lotus position, it's at the base of the spine, so to speak. So anything lower region, below lower back, and even going down into your legs or feet, typically can represent chakra imbalance. And an imbalance is when you can either have too much of something or not enough, in terms of money. Sometimes we have so much money. I mean, I've never known someone who had this problem, but I know it exists. Sometimes people have like too much money, they're bored, and then they don't feel like they have a purpose because they don't need to earn any money. And so that's an imbalance. And then the other opposite way is like that scarcity, poverty consciousness. And then also to belonging and linking and connecting to grounding into the earth. So that's the root chakra. And then we have that relates to color, and there's lots of information about chakras. If people are interested online, there's so many great resources. And then we have our sacral chakra, which is more about the divine feminine and our life force energy, our creative, our passion. So that's the color orange. And then yellow is our solar plexus, which is just above the navel. So each one correlates to a spot in our body. And what I noticed with that, so yellow is all about standing in your power. And if people say like, oh, I've got gut issues or indigestion, or, like when I have to public speak, I used to get so nervous. But it's interesting because if you actually become more aware, you're like, oh, I actually feel it in that spot. It's so interesting. And then we have our heart chakra, so, forgiveness and love and compassion and, consciousness from the heart center. Our throat chakra I mentioned as well. So I noticed for myself when I wasn't speaking my truth, or if I was like in a conflict, I would start to get a sore throat or start coughing or clearing. I'm like, that's interesting. So our body gives us signals. Sometimes people notice like gland issues, or people will always have chronic sore throats or ear issues. It's all in this area. And then, people may be uncomfortable speaking up and speaking their truth, or just discovering their authentic self. So those are examples of how they correlate. And then we have, between our eyebrows is our third eye, which is more of our knowing. It's like that even like as a woman or mother, is like that intuition, that's that sixth sense. I believe we all have it. We all have information, and it's just awareness depending on what your belief is. And then you have your crown chakra, and your crown chakra is about opening up to consciousness. So that's just kind of like a quick map. And what I noticed with people is that if you have, chronic headaches and you're always analytically thinking, then we can correlate that to the crown chakra.
So how, I can't help but wonder how our chakras may have been affected with, pretty much most of the world has been under some sort of lockdown. So has that had is that in itself had an impact on our chakras? Because ultimately we've been confined to our houses, we've been held back, everything's changed. Does something like that have an influence on how our chakras behave?
Absolutely. I think everything we encounter in our life can help us move more towards balance and imbalance. So I would say it really depends on the person, because some people are thriving in this environment because they're making more money, their business is exploding, they're stepping into new possibilities. And then you have other people who have had to try to pivot their business, who have, a model where their business has been closed because it's a brick and mortar store or like a restaurant, for example. And I notice that the additional stress will tend to kind of trigger those old wounds. And it'll bring up the old kind of limiting points of view that can come into your mindset. And it's so hard because it's such a stressful time and there's not a lot of certainty. So for example, if you already had an imbalanced or maybe not so open root chakra, which is all about safety and security, and then, everything that happened, your whole world is changing, it's going to be really hard for you to adapt versus someone who maybe has been preparing and doing I don't mean you can't prepare for what happened. That's impossible.
Well, I don't know. There's some of those shows on Netflix that
okay.
Doomsday Survivors.
Okay, Doomsday Survivors, they were prepared. Someone like my dad, absolutely. Okay, he was prepared before everything went down. He's like, please go to Costco and stock up. I'm like, what? You're crazy. He's like, please just go. I'm like, fine, I'll go. And then sure enough, everything. Yeah. So I was like, oh, my dad's right. But he, watches CNN all the time. He's prepared. So if you're not prepared and you're not good with change already, that will kind of tip you over. So you might see right now where some people are like burnt out, exhausted, they're trying to parent, their children have been home, and it's like so much to have to pivot and work with, opposed to people who maybe have already been, building that momentum to get some really good resiliency skills. So maybe Doomsday is like, yeah, they were prepared, at least in supplies. If you have food and shelter, then you have that security. So something like your root chakra would be really thriving because you're like, I'm good. I went to Costco before everybody went and it was like, no toilet paper. So I was like, I'm good. I got toilet paper. Thanks, Dad. I was prepared. So that took out the uncertainty where I didn't have to survive. So your root chakra is all about survival. So if you're in survival mode, that is absolutely going to be affected right now. And I think for everybody, really, honestly, it's such a hard time that it's just going to bring up all of those things.
So if somebody recognizes that they have a block in their body, that something's not quite flowing the way it should, and it's manifesting itself in the way of a pain, and they've gone through the regular channels of checking with doctors and what have you to make sure there's no underlying medical condition, what's the easiest way just to take those first steps to opening up our chakras?
Well, for me, I guess, again, it depends on everybody, but I find yoga is a nice, gentle introduction. So doing yoga classes, that helps to open your chakra. Booking a session with someone who's a professional who can kind of guide you through it to give you your own kind of blueprint of like, okay, these are the chakras you can work on. Individually, also working with herbs or teas, certain oils, essential oils also correlate to each chakra. So if you want to go down the route even of crystals, which I love, and I work with crystals and more plant kingdom and elements, that just knowing, if your root chakra, that safety security is not feeling balanced, then thinking about, okay, what's the antidote to that? Like what would make me feel safe and secure? For a lot of people, I don't know why, it was getting toilet paper. and paper towel. Like it
I
just,
know, and it was.
in the beginning, it was like,
I
everyone
wasn't paying. I wasn't paying attention. Like I knew everything that was going on, but when they started talking about toilet paper, and everyone was hoarding it, I thought it was because whatever COVID was gave you diarrhea. So everyone was thinking they were going to need all this toilet paper. And when I finally asked somebody, and they're like, no, people just think they need it because who wants to be without toilet paper? I'm like, that's the craziest thing. Never mind having food. At least I have toilet paper.
I'll survive. I got paper.
And
I
then
thought the same thing. I thought the
yeah,
same thing. Like, oh, it must be like a gastro thing. I'm like, okay.
yeah.
But knowing if that's a trigger for you, then just eliminate that. And someone like my father, who was like, doomsday, was prepared. So he was like, I'm good. Like he's like, I want 5 bags of almonds. Like he was prepared. He goes, I'm telling you, he's like, at least plan for 2 months. And I was like, wow, Dad, that's pretty. I thought he was crazy. And sure enough, it was necessary. So that helped ease his worry. And so if you know that about yourself, be prepared as much as you can, and you can fulfill that. If it was your throat chakra, for example, find ways to express yourself and to kind of push yourself out of your comfort zone with a little bit more ease and grace, and give yourself that guidance, or work with a coach. Like coaches are great for that, to help you, at least plan baby steps to get you where you want to go. And I believe that's what, when you're working with a coach or any kind of practitioner, that's really what you're asking help for when you don't see yourself. But if you want to do it on your own, there's so many free videos on YouTube, like chakra meditation, and it can help open. I have a couple on my podcast as well, where you can just listen to it and it'll help to open up your chakras. So at the very minimum and no cost, you can listen to music that will help, which I like, because it's good to know that you can. I think there's personal responsibility too, to know that you can do it yourself, or at least to have a tool to help, calm if you're in, in stress or stressful times.
Yeah, I find most of my meditations that I listen to are on YouTube. Either that, or I have the Gaia app, so they're on there as well. But there's some really good resources on YouTube. There's so many different things. There's so many different just regular meditations out there.
Yeah. So even just that, like a regular meditation will help, because really imbalance in your chakra is just that, something is usually triggered, or there's something brought up that you're under stress. So meditation itself, there's tons of science research now showing how it calms the nervous system. So just calming the nervous system will help also open up and realign chakras. The beauty of getting more information about, getting to the root of why I keep getting triggered, and those things, that's doing the deeper work. So some people are ready for it, some people are not. But in the case of, the root chakra and being prepared, just having supplies, that itself will make you feel comforted. So get your supplies, be prepared.
So what are some of the elements? Now I know that everyone's Bliss blueprint is going to be different because it's customized to each person in their situation and what has and hasn't worked in the past. But are there any sort of common elements to what somebody's going to find in a Bliss blueprint?
Yeah, well, I always start with, what someone really desires. And I remember years ago, I love the work of, I don't know if you know Danielle Laporte.
Rings a bell.
Core map desire. And she was the first person that really talked about, looking at what you desire instead of coaching like goals, like I'm going to hit, and it's great to have targets, it was just, for me, it was something different that really struck a chord for me. So for example, so like, okay, I'm going to earn $100,000 this year. It's more about, what do you really desire? What does $100,000 represent? Freedom, maybe more time with your family, maybe doing a job you love, having all your needs met, those types of things. So my first starting point with everyone is to kind of find out, like, what do you really desire? Because I work with Oracle cards and I do readings for people. And what I was finding is that I was working at I don't know if you've ever been or known of, like you'll see sometimes a sign like 3 days at the Best Western, and they'll have like psychics and intuitives.
Oh
And
yeah, I've been to those.
okay, yeah.
Yeah.
So I was working those, and I had someone sit down, and she wanted to know if she was going to get a Mercedes. And so I'm not predictive like that, because I believe you can co-create your life. If you
Yes.
want a Mercedes, sure. But my question was like, why do you need one? Why is that important? What is it going to bring you? Because at the end of your life, I always look long term. I'm like, at the end of your life, you're not going to go, I remember in 2020 or 2018 when I had that white Mercedes or the black Mercedes and I was so happy. That's not what you remember, unless maybe you're, I don't know, Jay Leno and you love cars, right? But for the average person, what does that represent? So it really started me thinking about, what is important about that Mercedes? Like, what is that bringing to you? And in the end, it wasn't the Mercedes. It was what it represented to her, and actually was not even linked to her. It wasn't even important to her. So it was interesting by asking certain questions. So every time I'll start with questions just to get some clarity and help people get clarity, because people will come in and go, I want the Mercedes. I'm like, well, is that going to make you happy? Like really happy? Is that going to fulfill you? Or, freedom. People use the word freedom all the time. I want freedom and to work on a beach and this and that. Well, sometimes it's an idea. And then I go, okay, so go there. Picture yourself on the beach and you got your laptop, like you see all these people, all these like, $1 million coaches, and the sun's beating on you and glaring and there's sand everywhere. And like, is that really, really what you see? Well, you're still working. You're still sitting on a beach, but you're working. And then it's hot. So now you got to go in the shade. And right. So it's like, is that really the working on the beach? It's like, oh no, I want freedom. I want freedom to be able to travel and work around the world. Okay. So now we know, okay, you need something online, or a business that you can just service anywhere in the world. So language isn't an issue, or you speak different languages, so you can travel. So what's the core of what you really desire in that freedom? What does freedom mean to you? And that started with my own journey. So for me, I always link it to a word or a mantra. So mine is Pura Vida. I've never been to Costa Rica, but apparently it's a Costa Rican kind of national word of a lifestyle. Pure. Have you been to Costa Rica?
No.
Okay. So it's pure life, or like simple life, like pure life. And it's the idea of not working, like North America, not working, like go, all about the money and about business. It's about living and enjoying your life, like the surfer lifestyle, like hippie freestyle, and just living like a millionaire, but not necessarily working like that where you're no time, so it's the balance of time and money so that you can have freedom, you can have simple things. And a friend of mine, actually a couple of friends of mine, went to Costa Rica, which inspired me, but I couldn't go at the time. So my husband has a brain injury. He has a TBI, a traumatic brain injury. So travel's not that easy for us. And nor do I want to just like, oh, I'm going to Costa Rica for 2 months, 3 months, because that's my lifestyle. Pure Vida, love you. Like, I'll bring a daughter and just see ya. So, travel wasn't a possibility to go and escape. And I thought, well, what if I build a life that I don't have to escape? What if I love my life here and now? Which is so interesting, because now, fast forward to COVID, it was like, I've created a life by, for me, Pure Vida is about simplifying. It's not about the big house anymore. Used to be about the big house. It used to be at the car, different things, and the vacations. But then I'd always come home, and then life would be like smack dab right in your face. And I'd be like, oh my God, I don't like this. Or, I'd be, not happy for, the other 50 weeks of the year that I didn't go away on vacation. So I had to pivot my thinking. And so that's part of my Bliss blueprint, because if you have a word or a concept, like, do you have a concept? Do you have a word, like a lifestyle, like, or how you?
No, I've never thought of that before. No, I mean, I have some great tools and resources that I've built into my own life. I have a very strong morning practice. I do yoga, I meditate, I have journaling, I do all these things. But no, I've never thought of that sort of, call it a focus word. I don't even know how I'd go about thinking of one.
Well, I can ask you some questions if you're
Okay,
curious.
let's go for it. Go for it.
So one thing I would say is like, how do you really want to feel? So you do these things, and I would say, just think for a moment, like, why do you do those things, or what does it bring you? And what do you really desire to create in your life? So it could be like flow, you know, I'm open to the flow of life, or does that resonate for anything?
Well, for me, there's a feeling I get, and I can't put a word to it, but we spent just about 10 years living in Nova Scotia, on the eastern shore, still part of Halifax, but it was rural. And at the end of my road was the most beautiful, or is the most beautiful beach. It's called Martinique Beach. I never knew anything like that existed in Canada. And it was the reason why we bought this house way out in the middle of nowhere. It's like 5 kilometers of white sand. It's just beautiful to walk along. It meant it was damn cold most of the time. You have to wait till like August and September for the water to actually get warm. But there's just, and my husband has the same thing. There's just something about being at the beach, grounding the beach. It's not that I want that sort of flip-flop laptop lifestyle, but it's the feeling that I get when I'm at the beach, when I'm at it's the waves, it's the sun, it's the sand, it's the salty smell. It just brings this inner peace to me. And I mean, because of that, I'd never realized it, but I now am compelled to live by the water. So moving back to Ottawa and living in suburbia is painful because I'm landlocked. I don't have any water around me. I miss it.
So you have that as probably a goal of where you would like to be again, right? In the future.
Yeah. Well, like we still have our place in Nova Scotia, and we're really hoping we can get there for August. Our intent was to spend the summer there, but yeah, ultimately I want to live by the water and in an environment where I just have that same feeling. It doesn't have to be, a sunny tropical beach, but it's just having that feeling. And I don't know if it's a connection with nature's energy or anything like that.
Absolutely. So then what I would say, I know for me, I feel like it might pop for you later on, but Pure Vita for me was such a great concept because every time I'm confronted with a choice, I will ask myself, will this choice bring me towards Pure Vita or away from it? So say if I use one word you use, you're talking about like peace and tranquility. That's really, it's an energy, right? It's hard to get a word. You can borrow Pure Vita for now. But so say for you, your version of Pure Vita, that Canadian Pure Vita of being in nature and tranquility. So will this decision bring me towards it or away from it? So living in suburbia in Ottawa is really far away, right?
Oh, it is.
But sometimes it's the temporary step to get you there. So then you start to choose, like, okay, if I choose this for my work, or if I choose to do this, it's going to bring me more. So even though you're not able to go there right now, your morning meditation practice, I guarantee you, brings you elements. You can probably even close your eyes right now, be on a yoga mat, and remember that feeling and be transported without going back in time or having to, go back there and still have that feeling. That's what I'm talking about, the here and now. So you can bring in elements of what you love, like being in nature, and maybe it's, okay, I don't live on the waterfront, but I can go down to the water, I can be on the trees. For me, I actually downsized my house to buy a house with a pool, so that I would have that feel. And my backyard, even though it's a smaller house, it's a lot where we have trees both at the side of our pool, and it's expansive. The birds are there. So when I'm in my backyard, I feel like I'm still in that, like I feel I'm in my own oasis. So it's creating that tranquility in your life. And there's nothing to do about money. Like it's just about choice. You making the choice every day to meditate, to do some yoga, which might only be 5 or 10 minutes, but it gets you grounded and centered into that special space. So then you can start to create your bliss blueprint of like, okay, what choices, and break it down, will get me to that end goal of being there. You already have your space. So now it's like, okay, that's you're way ahead from some people.
Interesting. So what are some of the things that will stop people from moving forward with, even taking the first step to even thinking that they can have a bliss blueprint?
I would say the biggest resistance is our ego, which is a really broad topic. And the way it shows up for myself, for clients and friends, and we're always, it's hard not to get out of it. I have friends, I'm like, I'm so sorry. I cannot take this hat off. So if you're a friend of mine, I'm sorry, I apologize, because I'm always like, I love you, so I'm not going to let you go down that road, and what it is that we have certain elements. And this is I do access consciousness work, and access consciousness talks about distractor implants. So we actually distract ourselves. And it's usually a common theme of an emotion where we get triggered. So anger, frustration, guilt is a great one. And I don't mean it's a great distraction. We can go down, when people talk about like, oh, I'm going down the rabbit hole, it's like guilt, jealousy. Jealousy is a big distractor implant.
Is the concept of busyness a distractor implant? Because that was one of the things that sort of came out from the whole lockdown, is that I realized how much time I spent doing dumb things. Like I would take up a Saturday and we'd be like, you go to Costco and you go to the grocery store and you do this and you're like, why? And then when I really sort of dug into things, it was, well, ultimately I was afraid to take the step and do the things that I know I meant to do. And I've seen a few people comment that the concept of being busy, I don't have time for that, I'm too busy. But really, when you peel away what they're doing, they're actually filling their time with things instead of doing what they're meant to do.
Absolutely. And that's a distraction. Like it's a literal version of busyness is a distraction. Being on our phones, Facebook scrolling, YouTube. And it can be tricky because we can do something that we're going to say, like, I'm air quoting for everyone, air quotation, I do it a lot, but we can say, I'm doing this for my business, but it actually isn't going to produce anything from it, or there are other things we need to do first. So busyness and fear. So fear is usually the underlying reason why we're like busy all the time. And I actually think it's part of society. I think it's a societal norm. Like, oh my God, I'm so busy. And I myself have been guilty of that. And procrastination. It's a form of procrastinating what you really want. So that's where, when I work with people in the Bliss Blueprint, I'll remind people of their priorities. For me, immediately I go, is this busyness idea, air quotation again, is if I do this, will it bring me towards Pura Vida? So I used to be a chronic shopper, and it would even sometimes just be window shopping. I'd go to, I still love it, like Home Sense Winners, and you kind of, look for the special treasures. And then I started becoming aware. I was like, oh, it's such a distraction. I'm distracting myself. I'm not going because I need something. I'm going as a distraction. And all of those like half an hour little, moments were, times when I could focus on my business and following more of my passion. And a lot of people build side hustles and, they're building their business part-time. So if you think about how much time, it's like Netflix. So I do believe there's time where we need to be still and quiet, because that's where we get our creative information. Or if you're an intuitive, people use language like downloading or channeling or that sort of thing. So doing nothing is also important. It's that imbalance, right? Sometimes you can do nothing too much, and sometimes you can be busy too much. And other times people are like, oh, I'm so busy, so I'm going to do nothing. And that can be procrastination too. So I'm always curious with people. I'll be like, is that really your truth? For you, would all those tasks really be necessary, or can you split it between your partner or husband, like, and do that? Or now, I think some of the positives that are coming out of COVID with business closures is, people really becoming more aware of how much they were shopping and what they can really live with, what they really need or don't need, and to maximize shopping trips. Or some people have streamlined and are doing pickup orders. So if you want your lifestyle, even though, it's a beach lifestyle, maybe it's like working more online for you, that hour you would have been grocery shopping, if you can just go and pick it up, will give you an hour to do work you love that then will create the foundation for the future you want.
Yeah, and I think you touched on something really interesting when you were talking about spending your time on social media, and somebody relating it to, oh, well, I'm building my business. And I guess that really relates back to, your return on investment, and weighing that against, whatever power word or saying that you have that's your ultimate vision, is just looking at the two, and is this going to move me towards there, or is it going to move me further away?
Yeah, and it's a really good check-in. I find I would catch myself and I'd be like, is this really Pura Vida? Because I would start to notice, and even again today, I caught myself, I was looking on social media and, reading some of the posts, and I thought, what do I have 8 million things to do that would bring me way more towards, but I was tired. And so I was just like, oh, I'm tired. And I was just kind of in that tired, exhausted gray zone. And I thought, well, what if I just put that away for now, and I'll do maybe half an hour of, this course that I had to do. So I'll give myself a little bit more luxury now in ranking what's most important to what will feel good. And a secondary part of that is going with the flow of your energy. So if you're tired and you're scrolling because you're tired, you're not going to want to focus on things like bookkeeping and your accounting. That's not the day. Like today I was like, okay, maybe I'll do that tomorrow. It's important, but I also have to know I'm not in that headspace. But could I work on something else? Like, I have a few courses that I'm taking right now. I'm always learning and growing too. So I was like, oh, I could watch that for half an hour. And then I got into it. I was like, oh, this is great. And then I got energized and re-inspired versus Facebook, where I was like, my energy was like sucking it out of me.
I know. And I'm finding like I'm spending less and less time on social media because I find it's just full of so much negativity. There's a lot of hate coming out of it, and it just sucks your energy out. And while it's initially easy to just, open up Facebook and just mindlessly scroll, you're so right in saying that if you can do, make that hard step and say, okay, I don't necessarily feel like doing this, but I'm going to at least start it. I'm the same way, that once you get into it, all of a sudden you look up and it's like an hour and a half has passed and suddenly you feel like on top of the world.
Yeah, you feel better, and you're on purpose, like you're on your passion. So that whole Pura Vida concept for me, like I needed a word because I needed something that would like almost like wake me up out of it's like being, sleep awake. And so I needed the conscious reminder to go, is this really bringing you towards this? So, you brought up a point about, social media. There's a lot of judgment right now. So if I'm in a vulnerable, and I'm tired, I may be more vulnerable and, to kind of get engaged or upset, then I'll know, okay, just turn it off. I spent, I think, an hour and a half floating in my pool yesterday, just empty mind.
Nice.
It was amazing. It's Pura Vida, right? I was like,
yeah.
in my backyard. I was like, this is great. And then at the end, I was like, bing, bing, bing. I'm like, I got to get up. I have things like, I had all this creative ideas and I thought, oh, wow, I want to go and create this. I'm like, okay, I'm going to document it and start. So being in that space of the tranquility and giving myself quiet time to recharge, re-energized me. And I had a class last night. So it's like, it is that passion reigniting, and following the flow to me is part of the Bliss blueprint. So if you're in a distractor implant, like when you were saying before, like anger, if you're angry, you're feeling guilty, you're feeling low vibration, you're not going to be in space like, hi, I'm going to do a pitch now on Facebook and come and do my business. And like, I want a client. You're not going to attract anyone. And I used to do that because of like, I need to do my post. And I said I was going to do it today. And I'd be in a low vibe and I wasn't getting the return on investment. I wasn't getting the interest. It was like a waste of my time in a sense, except it gave me information. So now I tell people, I'm like, when you're in your high vibe and you feel good, you're going to attract people. Like me, if I'm talking about Pure Vita and I'm in my pool and I'm walking my talk, I'm like to me, I'm happy. I feel like free. I'm excited. I'm like, drinking my kombucha. I'm like, life is good. But if I was in a tired, exhausted, like this morning mode, and then I'm trying to, come on here or talk to a client, they're not going to resonate with my energy. I'm not recharged. I'm not walking my talk. I'm not living it. So I really believe following the flow of your energy. We're human beings. We're not machines. Even machines, let's be honest, break down and need to reboot and have upgrades. Even our phones have an upgrade. And it takes sometimes a really long time to like update your phone. When there's an upgrade, you're like, how long is it going to take for this? This is electronics, come on. So what if we gave ourselves permission to reset, rejuvenate, so then we're in that high vibe, or at least in a higher vibration of happiness, so say like taking that time on your yoga mat, doing your meditation. It's so important. And a lot of the main business, like Tony Robbins, and they all have a morning routine. It's a common theme.
Yeah. And for me, I started my routine about 3 years ago. It's very specific. And I can't start my day without it. It's almost like a compulsion now. I have to, and I put me first. That's when I do, like I said, I do my journaling, I do my meditating, I exercise, I get a healthy breakfast. And I'm usually, some days, I might be doing that at 5 a.m. Other days might be doing it at 7. But it's very rare that I miss a day, at least doing the journaling part of my day, because I just can't, I can't start my day without it.
And what does it bring you? Like, what would you say the difference? Like, do you notice you have?
Well, I created this system that's worked really well for myself. I'm actually in the process of putting it in a book form so other people can learn from it as well. But it goes back to, you sort of mentioned something earlier. It's based on, I call them mantras or whatever. I actually have a name for it. It's called my Fab Five, but it's 5 based on the desires that I want out of my life. And then I tie it to my why. And I write them, it may sound silly, but I write the same ones out every day, because it's for that. I start my day by focusing on those 5 things that are important to me in my life. And, I sit there and I can either be sort of pondering what I'm going to do that day to bring it into my life, or I'll be reflecting on what I did yesterday to contribute to that. So I'm always, again, you have a word, I have these 5 Fab Fives.
Have your word.
That it's just really long. That it just it gives me that focus. It puts me first in what my desires are first every day. And then I have another gratitude passage that I write out. And then from there, I'll usually write another page of just, where my head's at, what's going on.
And what results have you seen? Like, I guess I don't want to spoil your book, but.
Oh, no. But the results are, you're looking at it. You're on it. It is I created massive, massive change in my life. And it's reflected in every part. And now I'm seeing it come through. And, I had the courage to start a podcast. I have the courage to write a book. It's intimidating to even speak the words saying that you're going to write a book, because it seems like, such a massive thing. And then there's some other things that I'm building as well to help other people on the journey. And I look back 3 years ago when I was at a really, really low point in my life. I just wanted to run away from everything back then. And then now I'm just looking at everything I'm running towards.
Yeah. So very similar then. We're both similar. It's like me wanting to create pure Vita here and now and not have to escape. I didn't want to be like living for a 1 week vacation every year. And then the rest of the year, it's like suffering and just hating life or hating elements of my life. I would never say hating my life.
I think there's a certain amount of myth surrounding around vacation, because for most people, although you have a week off, it's not like your job fairy comes along to do your job for you. So you spend like,
Are you a mom?
oh yeah, I got 2 kids too.
Yeah,
So you spend like the week before vacation getting all
right.
your shit on track at work. Then you're getting everything else ready for vacation, packing and laundry and what have you. And even before the whole COVID nightmare, airports were a pain in the ass.
Yeah.
And then you'd finally get to your destination. It would take you, you know, at least 24 hours to unwind and get into the groove. And if you're on a 7-day vacation, by like day 4, you know, you maybe have a couple of days where you're just in the zone. And then by day 4, day 5, you're like, oh, this is going to be over in 2 days. And then you got to haul your ass back through the airport and travel all the way back. And then you have to get back to your job with all this stuff that didn't happen. And then you're dealing with like a week's worth of groceries and crap and stuff you didn't take care of. Yeah, there's a lot of myth around vacation. So absolutely, building a life that you don't have to vacation from certainly makes a difference.
Yeah, I think that's like such an important word. It's like you have to do that, or you have to escape, or you want to escape your life or elements, you know, and just something like, and I bet they're very simple tweaks, similar to like my Bliss blueprint, is like those 5, you know, words or, you know, things that you're moving towards, like your, what do you call it? Fab
5. Yeah.
Fab 5, that's your word. It's like, is this going to move me towards my Fab 5 or away from it? And when you said that, I actually saw like a high five. It's like high five, like,
but it's like, so it's actually, it started off as, you know, I found out you could name your iPhone.
Oh, okay.
Yeah. So I was in a mood one day and I discovered this. So I put the name in my iPhone as Lucie is fucking fabulous. So, and it's really funny because every time your phone is in the car, it comes up on the screen.
Awesome.
So, and then from there, it, you know, when I first developed my Fab 5, I called it, you know, my Fabulous 5. And then it's like, yeah, that's too long. And then I put it to my Fab 5. But then unfortunately, there's 5 gentlemen that had coined the phrase before me, unbeknownst to me. I don't know if you've ever seen the show Queer Eye.
No.
Oh, those guys are known as they're the Fab 5. So like, but it's obviously a great idea because somebody came up with it before me. So I'm good with that.
And you can still use it for you, right? Like,
yeah, it is me. Yeah.
It is you.
Yeah.
And then, you know, that whole concept, like the high 5 is what I saw. Is like, you know, every checkbox is like podcast, high 5, did it. Like, check it out, high 5, you know, being at the beach house, high 5, we're living here now, you know, and seeing yourself. So that's another element I do. You probably do as well, as like some form of visualization, you know?
Oh yeah.
Either in meditation or like I daydream a lot. I was, you know, at school, they'd be like, Christine, stop daydreaming. And now I'm like, I daydream all the time. Safely, I'm not driving, but, you know, just being careful. And daydreaming about like, oh, like, what's that going to feel like? And how amazing. And, you know, you're talking about, it's like, I really want to see that beach. I'm like, that sounds amazing. So I could see it visually and get the feeling and the vibe. So seeing yourself, like, you know, when you said you want to get there in August, and then seeing yourself there for longer, for full time, and what that really is going to be like, and getting in that embodiment of, you know, your future desires is a huge element of creating a life you love and manifesting, or whatever you want to call it, a blueprint, or your Fab 5.
I think there's a certain amount of courage you have to undertake to, I think people fall into the trap that they can't have something. And I think there's a certain amount of courage that you have to undertake to say, no, it's okay to say that, sure, what I have is great, but have the courage to say, no, I'm destined for more, or I want more, or I want to have this. It's okay to say that.
Absolutely. And I find, finding a word that gets you the feeling, for me, was my bridge, because I always, one element I also work with, some of these tools, is that oftentimes we'll come to conclusions like, I can't afford that, so then you don't even, it's like you don't even daydream it's a possibility, because it's like, wow, some people, and I know myself included, was like, to get a pool, you would assume, and every house or open house I would look at, every house was like $500,000, $600,000, $700,000, $800,000 with an in-ground pool. Or you have to have the money, like $50,000, $60,000 to get it built. And I wasn't in that budget. I was downsizing, because of everything that happened with my husband's brain injury. And so I was like, okay, so what else is possible? So I work with tools of asking questions, so that when you can't dream and you don't think it's possible, I'll ask. We're like, okay, universe, show me what else is possible. And never in a million years did I think I would find a house at my price point with the pool and backyard I have. Now the kitchen's super tiny. My husband's like, we're going to move, and this kitchen's so small. And I was like, on my list of priorities, you know me, I'm not a chef. Cooking is not a priority. I'm good. It doesn't have to be a big kitchen. The backyard, fabulous, love it. Kitchen, and he's like, but for our summers are short, our Canadian summers,
yeah,
right? And he's like, this is ridiculous. I'm like, hey, it's going to create so much for me, so much happiness. My daughter loves it. Like, we never knew, like fast forward 2 years later, that COVID would hit and parks would be closed. Well, we don't even have to leave our house. And that's what I want to create. And now I have it. I'm like, wow. I'm like, that's so amazing that I was like, wow, I was genius, 2 years ago when we bought the house. So that is being more in the flow by asking questions, because we tend to get to a certain point where we get discouraged. I'll be honest. I just gave up. I was like, that's not in my budget. We were in debt. We were, a whole bunch of different elements to it. And our mind will go to like, well, it's not possible. Be realistic. And asking what else is possible, or, what would it take? And asking about Pura Vida, I knew the feeling. That's the feeling I wanted. And then after the house showed up, when I kept asking. So that's something I do. I ask questions like, what would it take? And then the universe kind of shows me and guides me. And that house went on the market. I was like, oh, wow. I'm like, well, this is in our price range. I'm like to my husband, let's just go look at it. Let's just go see it. See what happens.
So if somebody wants to explore their own Bliss blueprint, what's the best way to get in touch with you?
I'm on Instagram. I am on Facebook. I like Instagram because I find it's more visual, and I just find it's nice to connect with people, but I'm on Facebook as well. I have a website. I'm not as present, I guess, the website, but people can message me or email me, reach out there. I have events too. So sometimes people just want to, try an event, and kind of participate. So that way.
Well, thank you so much for joining me today, Christine. I really appreciate everything you've shared.
Thank you. It was so much fun. It flew by. It was very fast.
Take care.
Thanks for listening to this episode of the Roller Coaster Podcast. Want to chat or share your ideas about today's show? Pop me an email at hello@therollercoasterpodcast.com. Don't forget to connect with me on Facebook and Instagram at The Roller Coaster Podcast. Our theme song, Roller Coaster, was performed by The Lucky Setback. Audio editing by the one and only Jeff Quigley of Quigley Creator.
Life is like a roller coaster, baby, baby. I wanna ride, 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 ride. Life is like a roller coaster, baby, baby.